In this video, we're going to be making ourselves this magazine cover using a free online program called Photopea. And before we get started in creating that today, we do need to download two files. First one is a barcode, and the second one is this picture of Lachie Neale. I'll provide a link in the description of the video where to access those, or if you're in my class, I will give you a copy of those two files. Okay, to get started, let's head over to our web browser and load up the website photopea.com. Once you've loaded it, you will see a screen that looks like this. And if you've used Photoshop in the past, it's very similar to that. Down the left-hand side of the page, you've got a toolbox with all the different tools you can use to edit your images. Running along the top of the page is your menu, and just below that, we've got some properties that we can adjust. Towards the right-hand side of the page, we've got some panels that we can use. And on the far right hand side, this empty space here is where you'll see ads pop up. Because Photopea is a free program, the way they pay for themselves is by throwing a few ads onto your page. Okay, so to get started now on this magazine cover, I want you to head up to your File menu and select New. This will allow us to make a new project. Now we can type in the dimensions we want here, if we know them. Alternatively, we can use one of the templates that Photopea has for us down the bottom here. And in fact, we're going to use a print template. And the size we want is A4. We're going to print out an A4 sized magazine cover. So just check your dimensions and make sure they match up with mine. You should have a name that you'll need to type in called AFL Mag Cover. The width needs to be 210 millimeters by 297 millimeters. And the DPI stands for dots per inch, and it needs to be set to 300 dots per inch. That's also called pixels per inch, also known as your resolution. We want to have it set to this high number so that when we print out our magazine cover, it comes out nice and crisp and clear. Once you've got all that set, your background should automatically be white. We can click on Create, and we'll get an empty white canvas on our screen, which is the start of our magazine cover. Now the first thing I want to put onto my magazine cover is that picture of Lachie Neale. Okay, if we just go back to the example for a sec, everything's going to be working its way around him, so I want to have him thrown in as my main image. So what I'm going to do is go to File and Open, and I'm going to open that photo of Lachie. Okay, now I've got two tabs at the top of the page. We've got our magazine cover and we've got our Lachie Neale cover. We're going to stick with the Lachie Neale not the Lachie Neale cover, it's the Lachie Neale photo. We're going to stick with the photo for now. And we're going to zoom in on that by pressing Ctrl plus or holding down Alt on your keyboard and just scrolling up and down on your mouse to zoom in. Now I want to zoom in around his head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting him out from the background. So I'll just zoom back out here. We're going to draw around him to cut him out, and we're just going to scrap the background completely. So there's multiple ways to do that in Photopea, but the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use a tool called the Polygonal Lasso Select tool. You'll find that as the third option down in your toolbox. If you hold your mouse down on that little lasso, this is what I'm looking for here, the Polygonal Lasso Select tool. So click on that, and I'm going to start by clicking right in this spot here where his ear meets his cheek. Just around this area. I'm going to click once. When I click once and move my mouse, you'll see that a line starts to follow my cursor. Okay, and what I'm going to do with that is just move down his face a little bit, and I'm going to click again just inside his cheek. And I'm going to click again down here. I'm going to go click, click, and click. And you'll see that this line is starting to follow wherever I click and wherever my mouse cursor goes. So I'm going to go click, 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 click. And the whole point of this is we're going to select Lachie Neale's head and his body. Okay, and then we're going to transfer it over to the magazine cover. So I'm just going around his body now, going click, 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 click. I'm taking my time very carefully clicking around his body. I would stay just inside his skin. Okay, we don't want to select any of that sky or any of that background, so stay just inside his body. Now, go nice and slow here. If you rush this, it's going to look really messy, and it will pretty much ruin your end product. So you've got to go slow and take your time. Now, you might have realized that as you get to the bottom of the page, I've been moving my screen around like so I can keep going. Okay, the way I'm doing that is I'm holding spacebar. Just watch my mouse cursor here change from a little cross. Well, as I hold spacebar, it changes to a hand. And that allows me to move my screen around. And then I can keep clicking all the way around his body. When you get to little curves like elbows and ears and things like that, you want to do clicks that are closer together. When you get long straight bits like his arm here, don't have to click as close together. So I'm going click, 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 click. And I'm now at the bottom of the page. So I can move all the way across to the other side here and start the clicking process again. Okay, it's good to zoom in while you're doing this so you can be a little bit more accurate. Get around the ball there, get around those tight little curves by doing clicks that are close together. Feel free to fast forward the video here, because if you know what you're doing, I'll let you get to it. If you just want to watch me do it, then keep going. I'll try and speed it up a little bit here. Okay, now when we get to the hair, you'll notice that his hair is quite messy. We don't need to select all of that hair. Okay, you just want the main sections of hair. You want to try and avoid getting too much of the background in the shot if possible, because it'll look a bit funny. So feel free to give him a little bit of a haircut. When you get to big loopy bits like this, I'm just going to skip straight past it. Okay, we want to try and keep his hair looking pretty neat and tidy. We don't want to go too crazy and get all those little wispy bits flying up in the air. Past those wispy bits. Around the ear. Nearly back to the start. Unfortunately, if you do stuff this up and you do click in a random spot and you made a mistake, you will have to start the process again. Okay, so just take your time. Okay, and eventually you'll get back to the start. And when you click back on the starting point, you'll see these little black and white lines appear. Okay, we now made a selection. Let me just zoom back out here. So you can see the little black and white lines going around Lachie Neale's body there. That's the selection I've made. What I'm going to do is copy and paste that over to my magazine cover. So either cut or copy it, doesn't really matter. And go back to your magazine cover and paste it in. Okay, it comes out fairly small, so what you'll need to do is grab your Move tool from your toolbox and select the Transform controls up here in your properties. Now when you resize him, don't just grab a corner and drag him out like that. Okay, he will lose his proportion and he'll look a little bit funny. What you need to do is hold Shift when you resize and always drag from a corner and start dragging him up. We want to get him pretty big. Okay, he's going to fill a good chunk of the page. Now you see that he's got no body below his waist there, so we need to make sure that snaps to the bottom of our page so we can't see that half his body is missing. I'm just going to push him over to the right a little bit so we can see all of that footy. That's a pretty good size. So when you're happy with the size, hit that tick at the top there. Okay, and that just sets it in place. Now you're probably seeing this bit of water here in between his arm. We do need to get rid of that. Okay, so grab your polygonal lasso tool again and just go through and select that section. Oops, I have stuffed up there. So remember, get on the inside of his skin, just a little bit inside of it. Very carefully go around it, and we're selecting the inside part of that gap. Bit of hair there, might be a bit of an issue, just give it a bit of a haircut. Once you've made that selection, go and click on layer 1 if you're not already on it, and press delete on your keyboard, and that will just delete that section. Now to remove this little section, just go up to select and deselect. Okay, and we can zoom back out now, and we've got rid of that bit of water between his arms. So he's looking good. If you want to get rid of those transform controls, by all means turn the transform controls back off. I like to turn auto select on as well while I'm here. Okay, that just helps me select things like the background and the picture of Lachie Neale quite quickly. Alright, so we've got Lachie Neale thrown in. If there's any little minor touch-ups you want to do, for example, this bit on his arm here. Grab your eraser tool and you can change the size of your brush up here, or you can use your square brackets and just carefully brush out those bits. Okay, if you're not careful when you're doing this, you might have a bit of an odd looking body and arm. You can see mine's starting to get a bit wonky there, so I won't go too much further. If you're not happy with some of the bits of his hair, feel free to just give him a haircut, chop them out. Okay, soft brushes probably work better than hard brushes, so play around with some of these different brushes. Might even try this little one here. Just get some different effects. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. Go around his body, make sure there isn't anything there that you need to get rid of. There's a bit of a line here that's appeared I might need to get rid of actually. Not sure what that was, but that's gone now. Alright, happy days. So he's looking pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in a background. Okay, now to insert a background, we're going to need to click back on this background layer, and I'm going to hit that padlock to unlock it. Okay, now I'm going to go over to my gradient tool. That's this box here that fades from white to black. And I'm simply going to draw a line that goes from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. Okay, and that throws in a background gradient. So it's where one color fades into another. Now if we go back and look at our example here, you can see we have red, yellow, and blue back there as well as our gradient. So we're going to have a 3-color gradient. The way we change it is we go up to this color box here and click on it in the top left corner. The first color we want is that kind of maroony red color that the Lions have in their jersey. Okay, so if you're good at using the color picker, go and try and select a color that matches the jersey. Or alternatively, just use your mouse to click on the jersey and it will select the color for you. Click OK. And down the other end of the scale, we're going to choose the blue kind of color that's in his jersey. Okay, so click on this little black, double click on that little black box just there. And I'm going to click on his jersey and select that blue. And click OK. Now I want this goldy color in the middle of my gradient. Okay, so I'm going to click on my box just here, and a little square will appear. I'm going to go out and click on the yellow part of the line, click OK, and you can move these around, sliding them left and right if you want to. I think its position should be pretty much in the center there at 50%. That looks good, so let's click OK. Now, try and draw a gradient again. I'm going to start from the top left corner and go to the bottom right corner. And there you go, you get a gradient that looks pretty similar to the one we used here. I might need to make it pop outside the box a little bit. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. So that there is how you get a gradient background, where one color fades into another color. In this case, we're using 3 colors fading into one another. So that looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to put in is the barcode. That's an easy one. All we need to do is go to File, and we're going to go Open and Place. So we're going to open up a file and place it into our magazine cover. Double click your barcode, and in it comes. Use your Move tool over here to move it to the bottom left-hand corner of the page. Now you can see the issue we've got is that it goes behind Lockie Neal's body. The way we fix that is go over to our Layers panel over here and make sure the barcode is above layer 1. So just drag it and drop it above layer 1. If you want to double click on layer 1, I'm just going to call that Neal so I know what layer that is. That's that picture of Lockie Neal. Back on my barcode now. Okay, with it selected, I'm going to go back to the transform controls, hold shift and just drag in from a corner to resize it. Make it nice and small in that bottom left hand corner. I'm also going to zoom in here on this barcode, and I'm going to put a little bit of extra text on it. Okay, the text I'm going to throw in is the price and the issue number. So I'm going to grab my type tool, which is the letter T here, and the font that I'm going to use for this one, I did find one earlier that I like the looks of called Monda. So feel free to do a search for Monda. And I'll leave it as regular. Size 24 I guess is a good size to start with, and we'll just see what it looks like when we start typing. So I'm going to start typing in $5.95 for our price, and issue, you can come up with any number here. I'll just put issue 23. And you can use your move tool to just move them down above the barcode. Feel free to give it a bit of a resize just so it fits nicely on top of your barcode there. Okay, hit the tick when you're done, and that's got our price and issue number as well as the barcode. Remember, they are important to have on the cover, but they don't distract from the main content. So that's why it's pushed down the bottom left hand corner, well out of the way, and a nice small size. Next thing I'm going to add in is the big heading that goes at the top. It says Inside Football, Australia's #1 AFL magazine. Okay, we'll start with the word inside. So let's grab our type tool again, and we're going to click up the top, and in capital letters we're just going to write the word inside. Now it's going to come out very small, as you can see there. So what you'll need to do is highlight it and adjust its size. I'm going to go with size 220. And the font that I'm going to use is one called, I know it was what was it called again? Molot, I think it was. There it is, Molot. This nice big thick font that really stands out for a heading. Okay, so that looks good. I'll hit the tick there and confirm that. Now the colour I'm not really sold on. I want it to contrast a bit better with my background so it's a bit easier to read. So I think a lighter colour would look good. In fact, I might use a gradient. So what I'm going to do, over in my layers panel here where it says inside, double click in this empty space over here. Double click your mouse and a layer style box will come up. What we're going to do is we're going to put in a gradient overlay. Okay, now the gradient overlay, we need to choose 2 colours for it. So hit this black and white box here. And for this colour, I'm going to choose, what do we want? I'm going to choose, this is the bottom colour. I'm going to choose white and click OK. At the other end of the scale, double click on this white box and choose yourself a light grey. Click OK. I know it's hard to see, but it is actually doing something. Click OK. The other thing that I think we could add in that would look good is a drop shadow. Okay, so add a drop shadow. I'm going to change the angle here. I'm going to switch it from 30 degrees around to more like 130-ish. And if you want, you could probably adjust a few of these levers. Change the distance a bit there. Maybe the size, just drop that down a little bit so it's not too big. That doesn't look too bad. I'm just going to click OK and zoom in to have a closer look. Not too bad. Can't really see that grey though in the gradient overlay. Let's try and make this grey a bit darker. There we go. We start to see the grey coming in at the top of the box there. If I go down too low, it'll look a bit silly. If I get this grey here, that looks pretty good. Click OK. Yeah, that looks pretty nice now. We've got the nice shadow. And that text looks pretty good. What I'm going to do now is click on that. And I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard and drag down. And that makes a copy of that text. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to write the word football now. So in capitals again, I'm going to write football. And we're going to make football a lot bigger. We want it to fill pretty much across the page. So, whoops. Just stuff that up. Let me just write that again. So I'm going to highlight that text, and the size I'm going to use here, quite big, pretty much double the size, 545 is what I'm going to go. And I'm just going to move across and use my move tool here just to move that down below the word inside. Now it's a little bit too big. If I just move it both across to the left, that looks pretty good. The one issue I've got is this gradient on football here. I'm going to switch it around so that my gradient overlay is in reverse. So I'm going to move this white one down one end and grey down the other end. Just switch them around. So the grey starts at the bottom and the white's at the top. I'll click OK on that. I'll leave the drop shadow as it is. I think that's fine. We'll click OK. So that's how it's looking at the moment. One thing that looks a little bit off is Lachie Neale's head behind the text. What I'm going to do is actually move the Neale layer above the word football, and that puts his head above that text now. It's okay in magazines to have the model's head covering the heading at the top there. Okay, so yeah, that looks pretty good. That's right, it's the masthead up the top, not the heading. I should be using the proper terminology. So his head can be above the masthead. You might have noticed the barcode disappeared again when we did that, so just drag the barcode layer up above everything again. Oops. And that puts your barcode back on top. You'll need the text there to go on top of the barcode as well. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. The other bit of text that I wanted to put in there was Australia's #1 AFL magazine. Okay, so we're going to use a different font for this one. I'm just going to write it in first in capital letters. I might make it a bit bigger so I can see it. Oops, that's probably a bit too big. We'll drop it down. Yeah, about there's good. Australia's #1 AFL magazine. Okay, now the font we're using there is Mondar. We're going to change that font to something called Glacial Indifference. Found this font earlier, that looked pretty good. The size, that's pretty good. Got the size 60. And we might move it down. So the letter E there pretty much finishes off when that corner of the L there. I might double click on it again and change it to a bold text. That'll make it a little bit thicker. And I'm actually going to go back and put a gradient overlay on that as well, I think. I might do this silver one. I'm just going to not make it as obvious. So you can just see it there. That's looking alright. We'll click on OK, and I'm going to put a drop shadow on it too. I'm just going to make it a lot smaller. So I'm going to change the distance to about 10 pixels, the size, drop it down to about 5. Might even change that distance again to 5 pixels. That looks pretty good. Click OK, just using my move tool, just move it back so the E finishes where that L finishes. And that looks pretty good. So zooming back out now, we're off to a pretty good start. I might stop the video here and we'll say this is part 1 finished. What I'm going to do is come back in part 2 and we'll start to put in all these cover lines around the outside of it. We'll also put in this little puff here, a little bit of a free offer for the viewers as well. And once we've got that done, we will be finished. Okay, so I'll catch you in the second part of this video.